policy and alternate careers, I wanted to just say that the Science Network, for those who aren't involved, is a really great way to sign up. It's not just a listserv. It's not just I'm tired of seeing emails from them. It's actually working on building a community, and that's sort of why I'm here. I just started with UCS and the Science Network a few months ago, and we really committed to making this a platform similar to what you're doing, Erica, of sharing resources, bringing people together, especially around science and policy and government, because that's so important, protecting the role of data and making sure that the policies that are coming out are actually impacting people in the right way. So with that being said, I will turn it over to Chancee, and then I'll take questions later.
All right. Hello, everyone. Good evening, and thank you for having me. My name is Chancee Lundy, and I'm the co-owner of Nspiregreen. Nspiregreen is a consulting firm based in Washington, D.C., and we have three main business units. We provide environmental solutions, urban and transportation, and we do public engagement in the context of urban planning and the environmental services we provide. I actually co-founded Nspiregreen almost 7 years ago with Veronica Davis. We met at a conference for the National Society of Black Engineers in 2002, and we said that one day we would start a company. So we both went out and worked in our careers for a little bit, and then we kind of just jump shipped in 2009 and decided to start Nspiregreen. And through Nspiregreen, not only do we have the chance to work on some technical projects as government contractors, but we also know that a lot of work that we do leads to policy. For example, this past summer, we got to work on a project called Vision Zero. And Vision Zero is the mayor's campaign for transportation safety to end any traffic-related deaths or injuries by 2024. So it was a big public education campaign. But from that, we've seen a lot of policy in the district to come out, things about enforcement, different tools that people can use, all of it in the name of making transportation safe for all people. And so we know that a lot of the projects that we work on, whether it be an environmental project or a transportation project, can ultimately lead to different policy decisions being made. I sit on the Chesapeake Bay Scientific and Technical Advisory Committee. And so really what that is trying to clean up the bay and restore the Chesapeake Bay. And in that, we get to talk about a lot of the science, and there are researchers who do a lot of the background work, which leads to policy decisions. For example, there's been an issue about microbeads, and microbeads are found in a lot of personal care products. And these are things that are found to be toxins in fish. And so through that research and serving on that committee, this was actually introduced to the Chesapeake Bay Consortium, and they introduced it to different legislators. So, for example, in Virginia, they made a law that they would ban microbeads in personal care products, I think in 2017. So that's an example of how science leads to policy. So I'm grateful to be here today and to be able to really talk about my path in entrepreneurship. And I see Veronica listening in. So hi, Veronica.
Uh-oh, did you freeze? I think she.
No, I'm here. That was the end of my conversation. I was passing the mic.
We hear you. Okay, there you are again. Okay, good. Okay. All right, so that's a little bit about the Union of Concerned Scientists. Did you guys want to talk about your journey? Are both of you scientists? I guess will be the first question. Are both of you scientists? How did you get involved with the Union of Concerned Scientists? And then for you, Chancee,
I know it's hard.
I'm always encouraging, those of us who have, the desire to become entrepreneurs, to use your time in corporate America to gather the training, the background, the connections that you need, so that you can do that. The government, other companies are always looking for minority and diversity owned firms to supply them. And, unfortunately, in my experience, and you guys, I think, are both in DC, right? Maybe
yes.
A little bit more diverse in the type of companies that the minority, women, LGBT veteran-owned companies are. But here in Texas, I'll say there's a lot on the very low-tech end. So a lot of janitorial services, a lot of uniform cleaning services, and that's fine. You know, everybody's got a job to do. But I don't see as many on the technical side. So far fewer architectural firms, far fewer engineering firms, folks doing, you know, a lot of good, interesting technical work, even though we've got a tremendous number of engineers being matriculated at these schools here in Texas every year. So I know there was a long question / comment, but either one of you want to kick it off, and what's your background, you know, how you got to where you are in your career, and then, you know, especially the entrepreneur path, how you decided to do that, and any details that the ladies or whoever joins would be interested in knowing. So.
Absolutely. So I can answer the first part, and then obviously the entrepreneurial stuff will be for you, Chancee. But so I was actually born in India and moved to the United States when I was in middle school, and went to college at a predominantly white, conservative Southern school in Virginia, like Confederate flags on the walls kind of place. And
is that old? That's not Old Dominion, is it?
No, it's not far off though, but it's in that region. But I will say, so I really appreciated I'm a chemistry major, so I have a science background. I've always loved it, but I found it really hard, especially in that environment. And I think you've alluded to this as well, is at that time, it really seemed like the only thing I could do was the sort of very traditional, okay, I have a chemistry degree, now I have to get my master's and then my PhD, and then what? And it just seemed like there's just one track, and that wasn't very appealing to me because I love talking to people and I love being outside and writing and exploring all these other options. And I really wish that something like what you've created was there for me about 10 years ago, and maybe I would have stuck with the science part a little bit more. But I actually ended up going towards public health. I actually worked in women's health for several years with the American Academy of Pediatrics and the American College of OBGYNs. And then coming here really felt like I was able to leverage my chemistry degree, but really also capitalize on some of my other skills. And that's one of the things that I really want people to leave with here today, is that, you know, it's great to think about planning your 5-year plan and your 10-year plan, but sometimes life doesn't work out that way. And so what are the skills that you've acquired along the way that you can leverage and move to your new career or your new job? So, for example, the critical thinking, rigorous analysis. Engineers and scientists have this amazing ability to understand these like complex issues, but then finding a way to make it simplified. Policymakers love that. They need that. They need someone like you with your background and your technical expertise to take those complex issues, break it down and say, okay, what are the rules that need to come out of this?
Right.
So communications, writing, volunteering, all of the sort of what I feel like a lot of people wouldn't necessarily consider as being career development, it really is. Think about all the skills that you don't even know that you've had living your life that you can leverage, whether it's in policy or starting a business or teaching or writing. So there's a lot more you can do than you realize. So
I think we may have lost Chancee.
Oh no. It's actually interesting, hopefully when she comes back soon, but she mentioned 2 things that I was also going to bring up, which is amazing. One was the National Society of Black Engineers. So she mentioned about how she met Veronica there, and conferences and events, networking is so important. I don't know if anybody joined the Science Network Alternate Careers webinar that we had about 2 weeks ago, but Dr. Cohen, who is one of our participants and speakers, one of the things that she said that stuck with me that I learned was not just network up, but network across and network down. So even if you're in a space where you are not just meeting people that can maybe further your career, but people who you can help along the way, I think that's so important because you never know where those connections might take you. So definitely if you're interested in some policy work or alternate careers, think about your professional societies. The NSBE has a special interest groups. So all of those, there's a policy group, there's transportation. So those might be good to join and start developing your leadership opportunities that way.
Absolutely. I totally agree. One thing that I'll use to build on that is I went to my first NSBE conference in probably 20 years, and I felt really old.
I
As
felt
I walked around,
fine.
I saw the kids, and I thought, there really isn't a NSBE for old people, right? Most of the people there were students and entry level folks, and that's for here in Texas. I'll say that's what they're looking for. They're looking for relatively cheap labor. You have the basic understanding of technical concepts, and then they're going to give you the training to do whatever. So that was interesting. But I would ask the recruiters. I was like, "Are you guys recruiting for mid to senior level?" And they're like, "We can't find them. We don't know where they are." I said, well, there's probably a sprinkling of us walking around here, but then I thought there really isn't anything for us, especially if you're 15, 20 years into your career. You're not going to make a snap decision to move your 401k, for people who've been there long enough, your pension, all your connections, your years of connections, and your
Right.
Your vacation. That's what I was trying to say. Your vacation, on a whim. So, to make a move, you can't be lateral. Nobody's going to make a lateral move out of a company unless you're unhappy with the company or the folks that you're working with. So it's not the same as going to a career fair to recruit for us, especially scientists and engineers. And I always say this for all the calls. Hopefully you guys will come back on some of my other calls, that scientists, engineer, we're different, real different from the general population. You got statistically, I bet there's a large pool of introverts in these fields. And for the most part, when you get a job and start working, your head is down and you're doing that research, or you're doing that work, or you're working in the chemical plant, and you may not be managing your career. And so, some of the things you focus on, networking and ensuring that you're connected, so that you do hear about the job opportunities, so that you are, talking to people who may be doing some interesting things, that you never thought of. One of the topics we're going to discuss in a future Blab is going to be careers in patent law. So for people who've got, a science or technical background, that's a great opportunity to do something else with your degree. I make the joke that here in Texas, they pick them up at graduation and they drive them right over to the refinery. They don't even get a chance to say goodbye. They start working that first day. So, there's not always a lot of encouragement or diversity of job opportunities for people coming right out of school. You usually have to know someone who's done something, especially as an entrepreneur. And I can't wait to hear your path and your story to do that. You don't see a lot of people saying, I'm going to be an entrepreneur. This is great. This working, 80 hours a week, and no overtime. I love it. It's great. You don't hear that as much. So, I can't wait to hear your story and how you transitioned. What was the day you thought, I don't have to take this. I'm going to be an entrepreneur. Or maybe you were born that way. Some people tell me they were born entrepreneurs. So I can't wait to hear what you're going to say.
Okay. Sorry about the technical difficulties. So my background is in environmental science. I actually got my undergraduate degree in environmental science at Alabama A&M University, and I went on and got my master's degree in civil engineering from Florida State University. So after I got my engineering degree, like everybody else, I was trying to figure out what I wanted to do. But one of the questions you asked was what led us down that path, like what even made us go into, I guess, the fields that we chose. And I was a person who was always interested or participating in some type of social justice. A teenager, I was involved in these social justice organizations. And one of the things that people always talked a lot about was environmental justice. You hear a lot about it now because of what's happening in Flint, but these are issues that have been happening for a very, very long time in the United States. And I would hear a lot of community activists, but, I didn't really hear people who had the technical background and understanding who would be able to really bridge that gap between the communities and really be able to provide them information. So I chose a career in environmental science and environmental engineering because I really wanted to be able to provide technical expertise to communities. So that's really what got me started. But after I left graduate school, I went to work in Texas, as a matter of fact, at Texas Instruments. And I did quality. I worked in environmental safety and health. I did a lot of different jobs around in a manufacturing environment, and got a chance to work with communities as well. But that day, you said what happened. So I think that I always knew I wanted to be an entrepreneur, even though I didn't know that that's what I called it. But I never really saw myself actually working for other people. That was just not my my personality. And around 2007, 2008, that's when the economy was pretty bad. And so I had went through a couple of layoffs. I saw people getting laid off. And this was at various companies. And some of these people were people who had put in 25 to 30 years, were 2 years away from retirement. And I just, in my mind, I said, this can't be me. Like, I don't want this. I don't want this to be me. I thought that, companies don't really have a lot of loyalty to you. As someone described it, when the bean counters start counting and they have to take away people, you become just a number and they have to get rid of somebody. And I mean, I understand that from a business standpoint. And I'm not a person who tells everyone that they should go out and be an entrepreneur, because it's a lot of hard work. But for me, after seeing those things and knowing that, one day I sat down and I thought, okay, of all the positions in the company that are here, do I see myself in any of these positions, in any of these leadership roles? If I was asked tomorrow to be the senior vice president of XYZ, would I want that job? And I found myself saying no to every single position. And I knew then, and if I wasn't going to stay there, where was I going to go? Like, where was I going to land? And thankfully, I have Veronica, who also was ready to make a career change too. And so we just planned and we executed. We built a business plan and we executed. And you talked about the government contracting space and the different services that people are offering. I think that within this area, you see a concentration of people who are in high-tech fields, because this is where the federal government is located. And you do have a lot of people who are contracting to the federal government here. I do see them some dispersed in other states too, who maybe work at the state level as well. And we do a lot of municipal contracting. So they are out there. There are definitely a lot more in the janitorial services, but I'm starting to actually see more IT. There are definitely a lot of IT folks out there who are starting their own companies as well. There is opportunity for growth. It's definitely opportunity for growth. We are one of very few firms. I only know one other firm who is pretty much, I should say, just like ours. We offer a very niche service. We tell people that we translate engineering to English, and we do it to Spanish too. We doing public engagement, we kind of cut out the middleman. We're not marketing experts, or we didn't major in communication, but because we do know how to communicate, we do know how to do messaging, we're able to really break down technical information so that we can engage with the community, help them understand what's going on. So that's my path in a nutshell. I think I probably answered about 3 or 4 questions at the same time, just in case my computer goes out again.
No, that's good. That's good. I know people that are watching are wanting to know, how do people transition? And I think there probably are some latent entrepreneurs working right now in corporate America who are trying to figure out, first of all, what's my passion? That's an existential question. I can't help with that. But how do you then translate what your passion is, to something that's going to be profitable, something that the market will pay for? And it's so interesting to hear that, you have this background. I'm assuming, you gave a nickel tour, but I'm sure there's a long story about, how you developed your connections, how the two of you, it's fortunate that seems like you guys came together fairly early in your decision to be an entrepreneur and worked together, probably shared some resources, cried on each other's shoulders, maybe sometimes. And how you made that transition, from working every day and knowing you're going to get a steady paycheck. And, one thing I've learned as an entrepreneur is nobody tells you what you're supposed to do. So there's nobody saying, Shreya, I need you to get that report on my desk, by the end of the day. You've got to be the one that say, hey, I need that report. I better get this report out because, this is going to, lead to revenue. So, how did you do that? And Shreya, certainly jump in from a corporate perspective of, have you seen other people, leave or in this space and become entrepreneurs as well?
So I think there's two questions here. One, thinking about that mid-career jump, and, you've mentioned this a couple of times, and I think that is more difficult because you think about people who are kind of set in their ways and have a certain community and network, and how do you leverage that, right, to move. And again, I would go back to, I think, taking stock of your past and taking stock of your experiences and seeing what skill sets and experiences that you have that would translate. And often that could be as simple as just doing like a SWOT analysis, your strengths, your weaknesses, being pretty critical, self-critical and reflective. And then starting to say, well, what about my current job do I really like? And exactly what Chancee was saying, do I want that job? No. Do I want that job? No. So then finding people who have the job that you want and reaching out to them and saying, how did you get here? Tell me about your story. What is the path? What do what do I need to do to get where you are? And I think of people a lot more willing to be sort of mentors and guide if you're open and upfront with them. So identifying figures in your field or in the field that you want to be, and finding a way to connect with them would be a good step. So that's one of the pieces I'd have to say. But Chancee, sorry, go ahead.
Oh, sorry about that. Yeah, I think that what you said is definitely valuable, just in terms of identifying your own strengths and weaknesses. And I think that one of the great things about having a partner is that we balance each other out. And now we've built a firm, and we have four employees. We just hired another employee. We have 4 employees. It's very different. Now I have to tell people, it's very different from being an entrepreneur and being a small business owner. Because once you take this step, when it's not just you and there are other people who depend on you for their paycheck, it makes it a lot more real. Because there are times when Veronica and I have had to go without a paycheck. The first 2 years of us starting our company, we did not get paid. And that, you have to be willing to make that sacrifice, that level of sacrifice. That can be a whole nother blab. But when you have people who depend on you for their paycheck, you can't go to them and say, well, you know what, the payments didn't come in, the vendor didn't pay us this week. No, that's not going to work. You have to find the resources to pay people. And we have graduate level folks who work for a higher level salary. So we have to make sure that we're doing all we can to bring in business, to grow our business, so that not only can we take care of ourselves, but more importantly, we take care of the people who have entrusted us with their livelihood. And so that makes it a little bit it a little bit more deep, just in terms of being an entrepreneur. So some people have decided that they don't want to hire anyone. They just want to always contract themselves out and work on different projects or do different things. So you have to make the decisions and follow the path that's best for you. I don't think that there's no one size fit all solution. The way I did it is not necessarily the way that other people can do it. I'm married now, but I was not married. I don't have any children, didn't have any children when I started the company. I can't say that to someone who's a mother or who's married, that they can just, with no income and not knowing what else is coming. So you have to evaluate the decisions. But one thing I do notice is there are a lot of people who start things on the side, just do a little bit here until they can grow it into something else. The other thing that I know a lot of people are afraid of, and they talk about, is, well, how do you know you had enough experience? Look, I worked 4.5 years. I think it was 4.5 years. And I was like, I have enough experience. I'm going to go and I'll figure out the rest along the way. And I think that you said something, Erica, that was key in your opening, is that getting all of the training, taking advantage of all of the resources that you can while you're at your current company, that will prove invaluable to you. Just whatever courses they offer, whatever they pay for, whatever relationships you can make sure you take advantage of all of that stuff now. I think that will help you a lot in the long run.
To
Right.
Oh, sorry.
You know,
I was just saying to piggyback off of that. So I went to a conference, or I guess it was a meeting that the regional EPA was having in Boston. So I'm actually, UCS has a DC office, but I'm in the Cambridge, Massachusetts office. And it was the Boston Women of Color Environmental Health Conference. And one of the doctors there said something so interesting to me, where she was doing research around compounds that are found in hair products for African American women, and was really surprised by some of the toxic products that she found. And she was so moved by her research that she started selling and making her own all natural hair products to sell. And so, you know, again, this is somebody who's worked in her field for like 20 years, but was so taken to her core by what she was seeing in her research, and then is an expert on this. So when she was setting up her products, and it's, as you said, Chancee started off something small. She was just like, I can't use this shampoo because I know what's in it now. And then started making it for her friends and neighbors. And then it started taking off. It's that, you know, like you said, that side business. It's starting off something small if you don't feel like you can fully jump in because you or just got married or you're a mother or because you have 1,000 of other obligations to do. Finding ways to continue to grow your passions until you can fully commit to it. So I just thought it was a really interesting example, so I wanted to share.
That was great.
That is. And we would love to have her on. We've got a couple ladies who are cosmetic chemists in the group.
Yeah.
And trying to bring them on because they've got a lot of ladies who are chemists. And I'll make the distinction. There is a very large difference between a scientist and an engineer. I mean, we're all very technical, but I know I wouldn't make it in a lab. You know, when I started my career, I wanted to get dirty and be climbing up on things, but that's aside. Nevertheless, I digress. But, you know, there are a lot of ladies who, you know, have a passion for something. And, you know, the key is finding the intersection of what you're passionate about and what you've already been trained to do either through school or work. How do you combine that? So that's why I thought the Union of Concerned Scientists was an awesome organization, because I thought, you know, there may be some of us who are probably more scientists. You'll have to tell me, Shreya, do you have what proportion of scientists versus engineers you have in the organization? But I thought, you know, as a scientist, you know, you're learning all these, or you're doing all this really interesting work for a company or for an entity. And then you say, hey, you know, I don't think this is right for the environment or whatever. How do you then combine those two things, either to find another job with an entity, or, you know, take that on as an entrepreneurial endeavor? So, you know, can you speak a little bit about, you know, some of the positions, or, you know, what are some of the paths that a scientist, or if you have engineers too, what are some of the things that the federal government, or, you know, whoever would be interested
Absolutely.
in?
So we definitely have both scientists and engineers on staff. I actually talked to a lot of my colleagues before this to prepare, and I wanted to share a quick story of one of our energy analysts. So Paula Garcia is an energy analyst for our climate and energy program. She has a master's or bachelor's in engineering and from a university in Columbia, and a master's in international development, sustainable international development. So she used to work at Oxfam, where she conducted research to design investment funds. She's been consultant for different groups, and now she actually does energy policy analysis for UCS. So you can kind of see her path, and, you know, it was really interesting learning about that, where she's taken her nonprofit experience, she's taken her consulting experience with a corporation, and now she does sort of energy policy analysis here. And who knows where she would go after this. To go to your question, I think it's finding, sometimes it's not necessarily finding the job itself where you're like, oh, I want to work for a corporation or I want to work for a nonprofit, but finding the companies that are going to teach you the skills that you want to learn, and then taking that to the next place. I think a lot of people, or engineers that we work with or who work at UCS, have come from all over the place. We have another engineer, Dr. Goldman, who is our lead analyst for the Center on Science and Democracy. And she has an environmental engineering degree and atmospheric science degree, but now she works on sort of protecting the role of regulations, of science and regulations. She does much more high-level analysis on policy. And so it's, I think when talking to her, she was like, this is not what I thought of when I thought of an engineering degree. I thought I was going to be doing X, Y, and Z, but really at the Center for Science and Democracy, she does a lot around science communication, about the value of sharing your science story and how to do that with a variety of audiences, whether it's policymakers or graduate students or media. So again, I think it's going back to find fellowships, finding agencies that you maybe want to work for that are aligned with your passions and in the regions that you want to be. There are a lot of technical advisory committees. For those, I think you mentioned some who are food scientists or chemists who are interested in that, or public health officials. There's food policy councils all over the country that need scientific expertise. So finding local boards, agencies, public health departments in your region that maybe you can start advising or getting on the board of, that will help build your connections and network that way. It gives you, you're sharing your expertise, so you're using your science with the community, which is so important. And it really allows you to then also learn from your community about what their needs are. So I think just finding these opportunities, and UCS is happy to help where we can. And we're definitely going to try to do more of connecting, like communities and scientists that way as well. So.
That's great. I think that's probably the biggest thing is getting the information out there. I don't think a lot of us think, I can do something besides just the hard, technical work. Being able to combine, more of, I guess, maybe the right brain type activities with, the more technical things. I'm sure I've got probably lots of ladies who are interested in learning more about, okay, I'm tired. I've already done, the technical stuff, and I'm an outgoing person. I'm an extroverted person. I would love to do something where I can meet with people and teach people. And one of the things I always struggle with is, some of these initiatives towards STEM and getting girls in STEM. And, I already, say that both my parents were teachers. I love teachers. Teachers are wonderful, but teachers teach the science, not how to be a scientist or not how to be an engineer. So, I always wonder, why don't more scientists or engineers, and maybe there's an opportunity, but why don't more of them, go back and do exactly what you just said, Shreya? They're converting very technical information to, a very easy to understand, either for the public benefit or, helping, some of the STEM initiatives, in colleges or, elementary education, because I'm sure there would be a lot of us who, would like to do that. So I'll make sure that I touch base with you afterwards so we can provide that information so that people know where to go to look for those types of jobs. I think in my group, I probably have a lot of ladies who, someone told them they were smart. I know that was my story. You're a smart girl. You should go and get a science. Well, actually, it was chemistry. They said, go be a chemist. So I, went about my merry way of preparing to become a chemist. And I met somebody who's like, oh, no, chemical engineer is what you need to do. So that's exactly how I decided to be a chemical engineer. There was no research on my part. There was no, interviewing other chemical engineers to know if that's what I wanted to do. And then 20 years later, I had a revelation. I was like, I don't even like this. I don't even want to do this anymore. I should have been an interior decorator. I should have been a translator. So, I think that's very, information that not just, students making their career decisions starting college, but people who are working, just because you are a chemist today doesn't mean you have to stay tied to the bench for 30 years. If there are things that you have an interest in, can you marry what you've already done with what you have an interest in? And I think that's why some of the ladies that have expressed an interest in cosmetics chemistry have reached out to find out more about some of the ladies in the group that are already doing it. Because if you are, a person that's passionate about fashion and beauty, whatever, and you've got this PhD, I mean, what better, way to use it than that, or, some of the consultancy. So I'm really interested in, some of the consulting, is that a word? I don't know if it's a word, but how do you work with the federal government? What path do you take? If I wanted to, get involved, do I have to be in DC? It seems like a lot of the opportunities are in DC. How do I, get started on that if I want to make that career switch?
So,
and you guys, if you have any questions, I'm looking at 7:39. I tell you, the time flies. So please, if you guys have any questions, text or send questions in so we can ask the ladies. I don't want to be the one asking all the questions.
So I did just see a question, and so I guess because I was talking about working for a while without money, people asked about how our business is capitalized. It was a question, how our business is capitalized, and what's the source of income for the source of business operating cash. So just to clear that up for people, one of the struggles that small businesses have is getting access to capital. I would say that is the largest struggle, particularly minority communities who don't have parents to give them $1 million. But I think that also, a lot of us, and people always say, well, did your friends or family give you money? Did they donate? No, they did not donate. They didn't have, that's not what we had to rely upon. So Veronica and I really relied upon our savings, our 401k. So we exhausted our 401k when we started. But in terms of how we operate today, we were not able to go to a traditional bank and get a loan, even though we had excellent credit at the time. Because starting a business will take a hit on your credit. But excellent credit at the time, we were not able to get a small business loan. We ended up going to a community development financial institution. It's called a CDFI. And they were able to give us a loan backed by the SBA, but it's a smaller loan. And they were able to give us a line of credit. And having that loan and line of credit with just the two of us. And as we grew bigger, we were able to transition to another bank, a larger bank, after a few years, and they gave us a larger line of credit. So we operate through our line of credit and through a very small business loan, not a $250,000 loan, like a $25,000 or $45,000 loan. So that's how we operate. So as our receivables come in, so as people pay us the money that they owe us, then we pay down our line of credit and we're able to use it again for operating cash. Just to answer that question. The other question that you just raised, Erica, was about how do you even get into this? Do you have to be in DC to do federal government contracting? Absolutely not. As a matter of fact, the federal government does work all over the world. I won't even say just the United States, but all over the world. When you contract opportunities happening in Nevada, Wyoming, every single state the federal government is doing work in, the federal government touches every single state. There are opportunities with organizations like USAID, who they do work in almost every single country around the world. So it's not just being in DC, but starting out means building relationships. So when we started, even in the municipal space, whatever space you're in, it's about building relationships, because no one is going to hire you if they don't know that you exist. So they have to know that you exist. So we started going to a lot of small business forums, making a lot of connections. At each government agency, they have something that's called a OSDBU. It's the Office of Small Disadvantaged Business Utilization, or some acronym like that. But at any rate, we started meeting with people like that. We also started looking at some of the large firms that we wanted to work with and going to places that they frequent. What type of organizations are they a part of? Joining those organizations so that we can network with people. So it takes networking with people, whether it's people who are on the side of the government or other people who do work for the government, so that you can get your way in. Of course, there's the paperwork side of it in terms of having all of your stuff in order, all of your paperwork in order that you need to have to become, a small business, a disadvantaged business if you're a minority-owned business. But at the same time, it's really about building relationships, and that's what we found more than anything. People don't even want to know as much about how much you know and what you can contribute. And if someone has vouched for you and said that this is a good company, a lot of the work that we've won is because people will call us and say, such and such gave us your name, and be on this contract. And that's how we were able to procure a lot of our work. And so we were able to build our business off of that. So I would say that starting to build the relationships and identifying who you want to work with. I think that you shouldn't just go out with a laundry list, but really narrow that list of people that you want to work with. And then you will be able to, really be focused in terms of starting to get out, whether it's government, whether it's corporate America. There are organizations out there that you should join so that you can start working with some of these companies.
That was
Thank
great.
you.
That was great. That was great. I see we've got another question. This is Dee, and Dee has got a background in obviously finance. You can tell her
Okay.
question are finance related. And she says, how are private equity investors attracted to capitalize these businesses? So I guess she's, how do companies who are looking to invest in, small to mid-sized companies like yours, how do they find out about you? Is it through your connection through UCS? Is this just based on your past projects that you've worked on? How are you getting, or have you gotten to the point where you're taking on
So
investors?
we are not taking on investors. That's a conscious decision that Veronica and I made. Like, we didn't want to owe anybody back, so we didn't borrow money from anyone. So that's a part of our struggle in the beginning, was deciding that we were going to go it alone. But I have had friends who started firms that are more like on the software side, who've been able to attract private investors into their company. Some of it was reaching out to friends who they knew had deep pockets. Some of it was people putting out and going to info sessions or putting on to bring in investors. Or sometimes I see there are a lot of pitch events. People go to events where they can pitch their business to a group of investors. So I know people who travel that circuit, that they just go and pitch their business at investor events. And some of it's through relationships. We've had people approach us about investing, but it's not something that we were interested in. We've had bankers try to connect us with investors and tell us, hey, we know XYZ, we know this person, and they would be willing, you can make them a silent partner in your company. They'll probably infuse this amount of cash, but that's just not something that we as a company were interested in. And you can get those investors through your network, because through our networks that we have, particularly with the National Society of Black Engineers, we've had people ask us, so, what's the opportunity for us to invest? And that's just not something that we've made available. But that's just our strategy. I mean, I'll definitely do it a lot differently.
Right. Right. Do you think your involvement with USC was beneficial to your network? And would you recommend someone who's, maybe just starting the path, get involved with some of the activities? And what are the activities? Are there local chapters, Shreya? Are there events? I know that you guys were looking to expand into Houston. For the ladies that are in Texas that are looking, to get involved and maybe use this as a way to, both transition to another career and also, get involved in the community. The work that you guys do is so important because it affects all of us, right?
Yeah. So the Science Network, which is what I think would be the most relevant to some of the interests for the people here, is, like I said before, it's sort of this just kind of loose online community where you get kind of communications from us. We offer quarterly workshop trainings. I believe, Erica, you came to the one that we did with Dr. Parker and Dr. Cohen around alternate careers, and that was more ecology focused. We're sponsoring an award, right. So if we do have any ecologists or biologists or anybody in that discipline, finding these small student, grad student awards or fellowships can be helpful from a financial and monetary perspective. But yeah, so the Science Network is mostly online right now. We don't have any local chapters, but that's something we can absolutely consider. I think just staying connected with us through social media. We're on Twitter, we're on Facebook. You'll get regular communication email from us. We'll definitely send around resources, tools, anything that you might find valuable in your career development, especially if it's around science and policy. And then other opportunities like this pop up all the time. They're, oftentimes we're connected to media. So if anybody's ever interested in doing more with op-eds or letters to the editor, we offer trainings and workshops on how to do that. And sometimes those kind of platforms can give you the visibility if you are thinking about being an entrepreneur and starting a business, getting visibility and getting your name out there. As Chancee said, no one can hire you if they don't know who you are. So connecting with the Science Network is completely free to join. You just have to have an advanced degree or be working towards an advanced degree in science. And if you have a bachelor's or higher in engineering, you can be part of the Science Network. And it's basically right now we are in the stages of trying to identify more opportunities to start connecting scientists with community members. So you'll start seeing us in Houston. We're working with a group called TEJAS, the Texas Environmental Justice Organization, and they're wonderful. And this is a new space for us to be in as well. I think what Chancee said earlier was absolutely right. Environmental justice, I mean, has the concept and the term, and people have been working on this for decades, but it's really now coming to this national spotlight, which is good. It's more and more clear how we need scientists sort of working with community members and working in that process. But it's also important to listen and to learn from the people who've been here in this space for 30 years or so. So Dr. Bullard, who is sort of the father of environmental justice, as many have called him, is actually part of our science network and has done, we did a tweet chat with Black in STEM. We've done some other forums around this issue. So we're really starting to collaborate more with our community partners. And so just stay in touch with us. And then as we find opportunities, as you know, you raise your hand and say, I signed this thing, I signed a petition, but that's not enough. I want to get involved. I want to take it to the next step. Or I really want a training around this topic that you guys don't offer, nobody else seems to offer. Reach out to us, and then we'll do the best that we can. Our Science Network team is just a handful of folks in the DC and Cambridge office, but we really are committed to trying to elevate the leverage and the power of scientists and engineers. So we're working on it.
That's awesome. You guys are doing a great job, and I hope to continue partnering with you both to get the word out, because I think that's been the challenge. It's not that there are not other opportunities or interesting things or companies doing really great things. It's just communicating that out. And, Twitter has been a great platform, to get that information out to a broad audience. LinkedIn has also been great in that regard. But I think there's still, like I said, so many ways to find this information. You kind of get lost in the forest. Like, if I want some basic policy information, where do I go, right? So, I hope that we can work together on, kind of being a resource for certainly, my demographic, Black women in science and engineering who are looking for things related to their careers and entrepreneurship. So I'm looking at the clock. I tell you, it goes by so fast. We've got about 9 minutes. And so I kind of wanted to... One more
thing is that the other thing is that the companies themselves need to be pushed to start actively looking for Black women in science and engineering. So the burden shouldn't just be on this community to get found. It should be on companies to find you. And I think that's the other piece of the puzzle that hasn't been as good as it could be. So I'm open, and this is something that I would love to learn from you and from you all of strategies that I think we can push companies and institutions and the government to do to make sure they're actually sharing these jobs and fellowships and training opportunities. Because sometimes you get on this treadmill and that takes you in one direction, but if you don't even know where to get on, then how are you going to get to where you need to be? Something that I'm struggling with too, for sure.
Absolutely. And so my group is specifically targeting Black women because in my experience, even when I see things geared towards women, it's mostly not African-American women. That's usually the exception. So I welcome all. In fact, one of the things I'm working on will be a woman of color. So anyone that's a minority that, haven't found a voice in some other organizations can participate. And you're absolutely right. The purpose of BWISE when I started was for us to connect and network and share insight and encourage and empower. And that's really still the purpose of the nonprofit. But on the profit side, I know that there are companies that are, progressive and are actually looking at ways to engage and connect. And it's, it should be, you do all kind of hard other technical things. I don't know why this is so difficult, but okay. All right. Companies say, I don't know where to go to find them. I don't know, what network to plug in. NSBE is great for early career, but honestly, if you've been out of college 10 years, you're not still actively involved in NSBE. Although I know they have initiatives to do that. I think NSBE's brand is very tied to early career in college. So you've got people who are, 20, 25 years out of school, and their first thought to network is not going to be NSBE. So we got to have other venues for people to connect and, maybe help NSBE, change their brand so that can also be a way to network. They're certainly the most visible entity for companies looking to find diverse talent. But it shouldn't be the only one. There should be lots of places where companies can go to do that. So I'm actively working on that because, like I said, I think there are some companies are looking to bring on diverse talent. And I always say, when people hear diversity, they get scared, or some people do. They get scared, and really it's diversity of thought. And if you're looking to hire the best talent, that means you have to go places that you probably in the past haven't or traditionally have not. When I worked at one of my previous companies, I think they, showed up on campus and they, picked the folks with the highest GPA, and they didn't bother to even go to the next town to recruit students out of that school. So, it's really about making sure that everybody gets a seat at the table, and that you've got access to people who don't look like you, but still have very relevant information to share. I think studies have proven that diverse companies are more profitable. So I think it's just connecting to people and showing them that there are people out there that are interested in doing, some, fairly innovative things. And you just need exposure to the people and to the organizations that can help you do that.
So I do want to interject one thing about NSBE, and that is that so NSBE does have a whole NSBE professionals group, and it used to be called the Alumni Extension. I think that where NSBE is doing really well now is with the special interest groups. The special interest groups are a way to stay technically connected and to have some of them even have mini conferences that they do. I also, from someone who used to work in recruiting at NSBE career fairs, and from my experience talking to other folks who have used this method. Now, I believe you're absolutely right in that there has another mechanism, even if it's with NSBE or some other organization, where there's more focused recruiting on higher level. But there has been some recruiting of higher level folks, and the way it has happened, though, is not in a traditional go to the career fair. I have found that people who, you're right, go to the career fairs for early career, where people who are more mid-level to upper level have found recruitment opportunities is actually in the hospitality suites or in the networking arenas at the NSBE conference. That's where they found those opportunities, because for some reason on the career fair floor, a lot of times you're only talking to people who are early in their career also, on the career fair floor itself. But people who are in the hospitality suite, that's where they usually bring their senior vice presidents and some of those. On the flip side of that, I've also, and I think that this is probably a little bit different. I feel like there's an organization out there that does this. But usually when you're at senior vice president level, sometimes people are coming to tap you to come and work for that organization. And I'm not saying that has been our cultural, that's what's been happening for us culturally. I'm saying that that's what happens. There are organizations like, oh God, I'm about to mess it up. But there's an organization called the Executive Leadership Council, right? That is for, that's for like Black people who are in the C-suite. But there is an organization under it, I think, called Caliber, which I joined a long time ago, which used to be called Next Gen. That's to help you get it. To help you get in the C-suite. But they also put on a conference. ELC puts on a mid-level managers conference every year.
I'm writing all this
down. I don't know.
I think a few of us have probably been engaged, but what I'll say about and anybody who has not been able to go to any ELC, I encourage you to ask your manager to sponsor you. It's a wonderful networking event. It's just great to see so many dynamic people who are doing really well. But and I know Dee probably can comment on that. Usually you have to be nominated for that. So, these are usually very high performing potentials, and that's typically not something that you can self-nominate, say, I want to go to that. So it is wonderful, but you have to be invited. And so, we're trying to be democratic and let anyone who wants to further their career have access to this information and these people. So I totally agree. I support NSBE. I think NSBE is a wonderful thing, but I think there's probably room for other entities as well. So I'm looking at the clock. Boy, I told you the hour goes by really fast.
The Professional Development NSBE Conference in North Carolina, Erica?
I'm not sure. I'll just say my experience, especially here in Houston, the professional network the average age is probably about 28, 29. They be fairly young in their careers. Not that I can't learn from that. That's absolutely true. But, for me and certainly the ladies that I'm working with, they're looking to get to the C-suite. So they're, 25 years of experience. And so, they certainly can reach back and share their experience and knowledge with, less senior people. And I think that's critical. That's what we have to do. None of us are going to move up until we start learning how to share our resources and insight with all of us. But I think when you think about managing your career, you're looking to reach upwards and connect with folks who are, at a higher position, at least to give you some, career insight. So, that's why, I support Nesby, and I hope she dropped off. Chancee dropped. I hope it was because I'm just giving her a hard time. But Nesby is a wonderful organization, and where would, a lot of us be if we weren't members and participants in their activities. So thank you, Nesby, for that. I told you this time goes by so fast. We have so much fun. We didn't have a lot of questions, but I will leave, the last minute or so open for questions if anyone has any specific questions. And then,
I was just saying, as we wait for that, I just want to give one more pitch for the Science Network. I think that, that's how we found Chancee and Erica. I connected at Nesby while we were talking about it as well. And for sort of those mid-career level things, the skills to develop those, if you are more interested in getting visibility, I think, again, like working on media training, public presentations, start building out your other set of skills so that when you do network and you're recruiting, you can bring that expertise with you to really round out your research background. So I'm going to be sending around, whether through the link here or to you, Erica, to send out to your group. We have a toolkit that we recently put together on scientist community partnerships and what successful partnerships look like, as well as a whole list of different career blogs and forums, and some of them for early career scientists, but a lot of them for sort of mid-career as well. So I'll share both of those with you, and you can distribute them to whoever is interested.
That would be great. I don't see any more questions. I'll put it out to the group. Any more questions before we wrapped up? Sometimes I go over because I just want to make sure people have got opportunity to ask their questions. But I'll ask you to a parting question. If you had one piece of advice for, those of us who are either, are starting our career or mid to our career that you thought was helpful to you, what would that be?
That's a good question. It stumped us this last
Let me answer before my computer and my technology goes out. It could be a general piece of advice out again.
Okay.
I'm sorry about that. I have no idea what's going on over here. I never have this issue, obviously. Okay. But so the first thing that came to mind, especially when I think about entrepreneurship, is that someone told me not to get trapped by the golden handcuffs. And that meant, and what they were saying was, if you stay in a place so long, there's going to come a point where you can't leave. You have invested too much, not only because your salary is a lot higher, but you've acquired more stuff. You got a bigger house, you got a more expensive car, you got all of these things, and now it's a lot harder for you to leave. And I don't think that you ever want, sometimes people will tell me, I can't do this because I have, I got to pay on my car for the next 3-4 years, and I don't know how I'm going to be able to do, how I'll be able to do X. And I think that you just really have to make a plan and really think about, do you want to stay at a job for 30 years because you've gotten trapped by stuff? Or do you really want to get out and lead the life that you feel like is your purpose? And you don't want anything kind of stopping you from doing that. And I always say you only have one life to live. There is no career that you have to be tied to. You made a decision when you were 18 or 19 and you went to college for something. And no one says you have to do that for the next 40 years. I mean, that just should not, I should not be held responsible for a decision I made when I was 18 years old.
Thank you.
So if there is something else that you want to do, go and explore it. I mean, that nothing beats a failure but a try. Try, and then if it fails, oh well, do something else.
Yeah, absolutely.
Amen. Okay. I say to that.
And I mean, all of that, yes. But I'd say know your power, right? If you can't find something that you want to do, volunteer, build up those skill sets, get involved with your community. I think it's just so important to be a committed resident and citizen of your neighborhood, of your city, of your state. And so just taking more actions, whether it's on policy or advocacy or the issues that you care about. I think oftentimes people tend to separate out their day job and then like, these are the things, this is where I work, but this is what I actually care about. But realize that those two can be married. Even if you work, for industry that maybe isn't where you want to be, but there are local organizations working and need that scientist and engineering voice, finding a way to get on their board or helping them with social media or helping demystify some of the analysis so that they can take those advocacy steps. Know your power. I feel like somebody said that to me. I was just like, oh, yeah, know your power. More powerful than.
I love it. I love it. I think and we're going to have a speaker next week to talk about confidence. Hopefully you guys can join us if you're interested, because I think that's so key, especially like I said, this field is very heavily weighted with introverts. And I think, or what we used to call shy people. And sometimes I don't think you express your strength and your power and communicate. And sometimes that's very career limiting. So absolutely agree to everything that you said in that regard. So thank you. Looking at the clock, I can't believe it's been an hour. It goes by so fast because we have such wonderful guests like you two ladies. Thank you so much for coming in. I had a blast. Hopefully the ladies attending, that's my vice president in the background, barking. Thank you guys for attending. It's a great honor. Hopefully we can do more of these with the ladies who are interested in, careers and policy. And, if I have any questions specific to you both, I'll make sure I reach out to you and connect you with the ladies so that they can connect directly with you. But once again, thank you, ladies. It's been a pleasure and an honor. Hopefully we can do this again on some other topics. And certainly if you've got an idea or you say, hey, I would love to get in front of your group to talk about something that we've got going on, I would love to do that. So feel free to reach out and we'll stay in touch. I'm going to invite both of you to join Black Women in Science and Engineering on LinkedIn so you can stay connected to some of the things we're doing. And with that, I guess unless no one has any more questions, I will say class dismissed. Another great Blab. I know the ladies enjoy it. I see a lot of hands going up. So I think a lot of people got a lot of good information out of it. And good grief, everything's going off at once. Thank you again. And that's it. Good night. Class dismissed.
Thank you again. Nice talking with you all.
Bye-bye.